This is Spaceman Jones with a smoke break, and we are proudly sponsored by Earthy Now and Urban Combat Wrestling.
This is a smoke break with Spaceman Jones. And we're going to talk to Alli Marshall this morning about the written and the spoken word and how it's been able to help her and also how she's been able to use it to help other people. How you doing this morning, Alli?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's a sunny day out. I'll take that.
Yeah, I will too. I will too. What I like to do, starting out with the smoke break, is to invite a little bit of the spirit in, a little bit of sanctity. So we'll just sit for a few breaths and kind of ground, and so we can have the support
Okay,
uh,
sounds great.
of, in this conversation. We'll just do a simple round of 10 breaths, and I'll just count them off. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right. Uh, you are, I would call you, for those who don't know, Alli Marshall, based in Asheville, North Carolina, was one of the people who was instrumental in helping me and my music career get a little bit more publicity. She has been very kind to the artists of Western North Carolina over the years through her time at the Mountain Express. And now she's on to new, bigger things with the written and the spoken word.
Yeah, at least different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you wouldn't mind to kind of talk a little bit about your relationship with our language, with English, and how you use it to help yourself and to others.
Yeah, that's a great question. And in some ways it's challenging to answer just because I feel like it's so intuitive. Part of me feels like there's certain art forms that when we tap into them, they just really speak to us, and we find that, that's our kind of ideal form in which to communicate. And at the same time, I feel like that can be a bit of a stumbling block. Like, I depend so much upon written communication that when it doesn't work for me, it's like I'm not willing to believe it when I'm missing in communication with other people through written word. It's just, I'm still like, but no, this is what I'm good at. Um, so yeah, so it's a process of kind of always being a student in that and being curious and finding the spaces in writing where that works and where it doesn't work. Uh, yeah. And as far as like choosing that medium, it almost came out of like default. I was really interested in visual art as a young person, and I did write, but I didn't think of myself as a writer until I had a friend in high school who, for some strange reason, we just got in this habit of both keeping journals, and then we would trade them every couple days. And it was like, instead of having those conversations, we would just read each other's journals.
Hmm.
But I loved that process so much of putting words down on paper and being able to process my own thinking through the written word, that it became a lifelong practice of journaling, which eventually, became poetry and short stories and in any number of different things.
Um, so do you find that it's easier to communicate your feelings in that medium of actual writing versus being able to like talk to people?
Um, I find that the difference is that in the medium of writing, I'm able to edit. And so I gain clarity through that, but it's also a bit of a protection for myself because, just in being a human on this planet, like my own fears and triggers are always so present that, of course, in the written word, I edit those out. And in speaking to people, I am confronting those all the time and being clumsy. And I don't like that experience.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm better in written word, but I'm working toward being more authentic in just my one-on-one communications.
Okay. Because I find that I feel more eloquent. I feel more able to get to the point of what I'm saying when I write
Yeah.
versus speaking. And sometimes for me, my emotions can get the better of my thought process. So I'm not able to be as metered as I can be when I'm writing.
Yeah.
I find I find that it's a much, like you said, it's a much safer way for me to communicate. Even though in this new, when I grew up, we didn't have text messages or instant messages. You had to call people. And for me, using that medium outside of school and the rules of grammar in English has been difficult for me to get my point across and to also understand other people. I think that a lot gets lost in our text-based communication way that we are doing, like in the 21st century. I find that a lot of my communication gets lost when I am not able to write without the emotional component. If I'm in the emotional component, then my clarity seems to shrink.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's tricky to be in the emotion, but at the same time, I feel like for the written word, it's so important to be able to tap into that emotion because it doesn't come across, it doesn't convey if there's not connectivity to emotion. That's what makes writing good, I believe. But yeah, it's just that one step back. It's that you can witness the emotion without being fully impacted by it.
Yes. Okay, and so you mentioned journaling, which is something that got me through some really tough times in my life. And can you speak to how your journaling experience has made you a writer that's better able to convey your emotions through story?
Yeah, I think that having a daily practice of journaling is important for a number of reasons. One, it's a great tool for self-therapy. And I really believe that all artists need to be in the process of constantly checking in with themselves and just looking at what they're going through and kind of keeping a track of the day-to-day successes and failures. I also think that by just getting thoughts on paper in a form where you're not trying to create something for public consumption, it's like a very non-judgmental platform. I mean, I'm still judgmental in my journaling, and I've taken to noting that, like, that was a stupid sentence. Like I'll actually write the thoughts that I'm having when I'm judging my journaling. But it's just kind of that like info dump. And I feel like by putting that out there and giving myself this permission to just write unfettered stuff that no one else is ever going to read, then when I move into more professional work or artistic work, it's like that, those initial crazy thoughts are already done. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the warm up,
Yeah. And I can see how it could open you to kind of break those walls to get past some of the barriers that's holding your creativity back. When you were saying that, I was thinking like, wow, that would be a real good way to push past my own boundaries with what I'm uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. Wow, I never thought of it I never thought of it in that way. Just being a way to kind of warm yourself up and push past some of these artificial boundaries that we create for ourselves, especially in creating when we know that we're going to give it to the public.
Yeah.
I think having a bull session with yourself beforehand can kind of warm you up and get you not afraid of sharing, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Though I will admit that every now and then I've kept all my journals since I was 15, and every now and then I'll get it in my head to look back because I'll be like, oh, I bet there's some great material in there and I can do something with it, and it's all horrifying. I'm
Yeah.
just like like wow, I was an idiot and this is embarrassing. And I'm talking about stuff I wrote 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So some people I know really use those journals and go back and find usable material in those. My best practice is to never go back and read them. It's like put the stuff in there and let it be there. Just like
Yeah.
bury it. It's out. It's done.
Could you going back to speaking about those journals, and you said like you read things that horrified you about yourself in the past. How has staying consistent with that practice helped you to overcome those things that when you look back at you, it's just so embarrassed, and you can kind of say, wow, I was able to get past this certain point. How has I think that process of writing can really be a big tool about that. Can you share any thoughts?
Yeah. Oh man. Like I really want to tell you that by doing this and creating this practice of self-awareness that I have just become such a spiritually enlightened person. And that would be such bullshit because, I mean, the thing is like, it's embarrassing because I still feel that and I still see those patterns in myself. Um, but, but at the same time, my belief is the way we progress in our human development it's not linear. It's like it's a spiral, and it's almost like we're born into this world with a set like 10 issues, so we keep encountering the same issues over and over, but we're encountering them at different points of our growth. So I think it does help with that. Like I'm feeling like, oh, I'm here again. I'm dealing with my sense of self-worth or my place in community or fears of abandonment, but I'm doing it from this new perspective. Like I can see how I've gathered tools and learned to use them. So I'm still encountering the same roadblocks, but maybe hopefully with a little bit more grace and maturity, hopefully.
I, I can definitely see how that's a process for everybody, I believe.
Yeah.
You keep running into the same things because of where you were born, genetics, your earlier choices, just a whole litany of different things that build up this situation. And you can like for me, I continue to, like you said, hit those same spots but from different perspectives. And I'm able to write. And since I am a music artist and I do kind of catalog, like I guess my songs are kind of like audio journal entries, which I do edit and kind of tailor for consumption for all the people, but it's still my thoughts. And I can look back and I can listen and I can see where there has been growth and change my mind about issues, because there's a big idea with people that you're supposed to be like this monolith. You know what I'm saying? You got to stand for the same thing all the time and be so solid and dot, dot, dot. And I'm just like, that hasn't been true in my life. I believed in some things that I do not believe in anymore. You know what I'm saying? And it's a definite difference to my perspective on life. So when I come back to those same issues, I'm able to, like you said, greet them with a little bit more skill, a little bit more clarity. And also maybe I'm able to find that silver lining that's in there when you work hard. It's always a treasure down inside of these difficulties.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, that's like the basis of all storytelling, is telling that story.
Mm-hmm. And I think that in writing and probably recording too, because like you said, you're literally creating a record of your personal development and where you were at a time in your life. I think that in a way we're leaving breadcrumbs for ourselves that we maybe can't see in the moment, but when we look at a period of time, begin to see. I kind of had this realization. I was at a reading by the poet Jericho Brown, who's just like a really great influence on my work. And somebody had asked him, how do you know when it's time to put a collection together and publish it? And he said, what you do is you look back over your work from 2 years and you find the themes that emerge. And that when you look at this big span, you'll see that you've been wrestling with the same 2 to 3 themes, and all of your work is really going back to that. And that's what you pull from until you have like X number of poems or whatever to make a collection. But that perspective to me was like, oh, that's absolutely true. I really do get in themes. And I think I don't realize I'm doing that until he said it. And so now I've been, coming at my writing more with this awareness, like this is the theme that's calling to me. Can I go to it intentionally and work in this theme?
Wow, that's something that I hadn't ever thought about before.
Yeah.
And like while you were saying it, it made me think about my musical choices over the past couple of years. And I can see where I was coming. I can see places where I was coming from a real true place, and then there's other places where I was just trying so hard, and that's like evident in the work. It's evident in everything that has came behind that. But I also can see where my art is forcing me to embrace all parts of myself, my shadow side, the stuff that I don't want to deal with, the stuff that I kind of push back is kind of calling me back, because all of the issues that really push me and move me are things that are concerning my darker parts that I kind of project out into the world onto, these different villains that are in my life. It's all coming from me and what I don't want to accept,
That makes me think of a question I want to ask you. This just popped into my head. Do you feel like art, whatever the medium is, that art is the language that we speak with our shadow self?
I think that it's that when it's really true, that there's going to be a large part of the shadow self, because art is coming from the subconscious. It's coming from the intuitive through the conscious, because that's what we have to use to like measure, weigh, scale. It's the box that we're in. So all of these thoughts, all of this art is coming from way, way back deep inside of us. And so the way that we express it is kind of telling us how in touch and how much are we accepting this, how it comes out. You see what I'm saying? It's like, so yeah, it is. I think that all art is very much heavily influenced by the shadow side, very heavily influenced by the unspoken, by the emotional aspect. I think that all art is meant to be emotionally and spiritually moving, not so much mentally. Because when you get into the thinking of it, that's when you get these hard lines, delineations, like, and then it's got to be good or bad or thoughtful or not. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think completely that art is the language of at least the subconscious. Most art, when it's striking you in the visceral ways that hit your gut and they really like turn you physically, they excite that fight, flight, or fight response. That stuff is coming from the shadow.
Yeah.
That stuff is the stuff that we don't want to accept. That's the thing that made us put the fire at the front of the cave.
Yes.
And we're always drawn to engage with it, to understand it, and to somehow incorporate it in our lives where we're not so fearful.
Right. Yeah. Man, I definitely am aware of that physical feeling in creating art and getting to something that's very rich and also scary, like that kind of fire in the belly, like, that it's both repellent and attractive. You're like, I want to go toward it and I'm terrified. Like,
because you don't know if you're like me, you don't know what you're going to reveal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you want all of these people in your mess? Because that's, and speaking from being like who I am in the society, like it's a lot of fears and a lot of things that I don't want to expose to the world because of tradition and the way that things are. But to be like truly living my whole life, I have to engage with those things like at a very deep level. And I think that art helps me to continue to pound at that gate, let me in, you know?
Right.
And so I have, what was you gonna say?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that having that practice is a way to kind of create accountability to keep showing up for that work, because I could see how someone who wasn't involved in the art would, it'd be really easy to not, because this is painful. I mean, it's super rewarding, but it's really challenging and painful too. And for those of us who are in that relationship with the creative process, like, because that's our work, we keep showing up for it.
Mhm.
But if it's not your work, like, what's making
It's
you?
excruciating. It's like dragging yourself through torture without having a therapist to be right there to kind of guide you through it.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about you getting into the world of spoken word and getting up on stage and like really putting yourself out there. You said something earlier about your journals and how you had a friend where y'all would read each other's journals. That's a very risky move, and it shows me that you are kind of not afraid to be vulnerable. And I know for me, getting up on stage is a very vulnerable act. I feel very naked and exposed
Mm-hmm.
while I'm up there. But it's kind of empowering too because I'm kind of getting over some stuff. Could you talk about your experience with live performance and how it's helped you to be like more yourself?
Yeah, live performance has been a huge and fairly recent gift in my life. It's not something I was ever aware that I did. In fact, people who've known me, previous to this and aren't aware of my performances are generally shocked, like, to see me do anything on stage. And it really startled me too. It just came about that I had joined a group of women who wanted to do just create events to read our poetry in public, and that was hard enough. I mean, the narrative I told myself was that I was really uncomfortable with a microphone and I didn't like speaking in front of people, and I was very nervous about it. But for some reason, we decided to do this performance, and I was like, it'd be better if we memorized our stuff. Because I had seen a bunch of people doing, spoken word from memory, and I just wanted to try it. And I was really surprised by how relatively easily that came to me. And my great fear was going on stage and forgetting everything. But when we actually did the show, what happened instead was that the characters of the work just sort of seemed to flow through me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt this connection between like source and the audience, like I was channeling something. And that was really profound for me and something that I was instantly just like, yeah, I want more of that. So I just started creating ways to do it. Because I don't come from a theater background, I've really just kind of created this way, and I'm still messing with it, like to make shows. A lot of my stuff is like it's like a theatrical show on stage, but the narrative is through spoken word instead of like a linear dialogue or monologue. But I love it. I definitely kind of go through hell in the process. I love creating the show. I'm just riddled with self-doubt. I'm waking up at 2 a.m. in like a cold sweat, panic, like questioning my life choices and figuring I'm going to die on stage. Though what I tell myself is if I die on stage, like, I don't think about it anymore,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been this thing that, in my like mid 40s, I discovered I could do, and I love it. And it's so true and authentic. And it's also just something where I'm continually encountering myself and my fears and my strengths. And yeah, not having been able to do it because of COVID and quarantine, two shows I had planned were canceled, and so.
Oh yeah, I know that pain.
Yeah,
Oh man,
yeah,
that sucks.
yeah. You mourn it, you grieve it, because
Yeah, especially like after working so hard to bring something to fruition, all of the planning, all of the writing, all of the going back and forth,
Yeah,
you know, the actual technical stuff of like getting the building and setting up your ticket sales, you know, only to have to cancel it. That's happened to myself and far too many of us entertainment types
yeah,
during this COVID-19. It's a tough thing, man.
yeah.
It brought a lot of depression into my household for sure. Right? It was pretty rough.
I think it's brought that for sure, but also I've been really inspired by the ways I've been seeing different people pivot and pick up new tools and like hone new skills. I know you and I have talked about that a bit before, but yeah, it's tough and inspiring at the same
Yeah.
time.
Well, for me, it's like a necessity. I create out of a lot of a like I'm outrunning failure in the rear view. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of desperation in the way that I get things done,
Yeah,
um, and I think that this has made me really slow down to see what's actually true about what we're doing and where my motivation's coming from, and I've been able to kind of stop being hounded by, oh, you're going to be a failure if you don't make it, to kind of dig into what am I creating,
right.
how am I gonna, you know, where's my motivation gonna come from if I lose this negative motivation? You know,
Yeah,
this time has been really re-looking at things and getting back excited about creating it from a more solid place where I'm not running from failure. You
yeah,
know, I'm not running from um, you know, mistakes in the past or whatnot. I'm actually creating from a place where I want to do this work, and
right.
it's not just you know, patching some mistakes up from the past or trying to make up for lost time or something.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And we're about at the end of this smoke break, and I thank you for coming on. And if you have anything that you need to pitch, any
Yeah.
websites or anything that you want the people to go check out, now is the time.
Okay, well, yeah, all kinds of things are coming up in my life right now. I've been working on I've been getting into doing some video editing and creating some spoken word videos. So, like, I'm actually creating my own. What are you doing here, Masked Avenger? Can't you see I'm on a call?
Oh,
Hang on, hang on. I gotta take care. Just give me 1 second.
oh, who is this guy? Oh, hey, Ali's him off to the ropes. She catches him while he coming in, and he's down. The Masked Avenger is down. Oh no, a book shot right to the head. My God, she killed him. She killed him with bicycle
Hi,
Mary.
Johnson trying to tell me about. Oh, oh,
Oh, now he hit the elbow. That's not how you treat a lady, Masked Avenger.
Smoke break? I think you mean joke break.
oh,
Oh, and now she's back. She kicks him in the head.
my poetic justice.
Poetic Justice wins the match.
Yeah, that's what you gotta deal with when you're in the spoken word business. A lot of craziness around here, but
Masked Avenger looked like you gave him a heck of a beating. Maybe we'll book that on the next Urban Combat Wrestling show. We can come and have a poetry slam.
yeah, that's a poetry slam for you.
Thank you so much for coming on. That was great. This has been a smoke break with Spaceman Jones featuring Alli Marshall. Y'all stay safe and peace to y'all. Thank you.
You.
Oh my God, that was so cool.
Yeah.
You bring your boy Mook, and I'll take him down too.
Hey Dave, how you doing, man?
He's saying hey to you.
And this has been a smoke break with Spaceman Jones, sponsored by Earthy Now. and urban combat wrestling. See y'all next week.